I hope that the self-reflection activity was of help. Let's continue our conversation about needs and how they relate to demand and to supply-driven decisions within our organizations. Let me introduce you to my sons. My older son is Jordan, and my younger son is Ryder. And they know that I study needs and needs assessment, and so they love to use the word need in order to describe the things that they want. So they often say things like, "We need new bikes." And this is a common statement within our language. People might say, "We need learning on this." Or your client or boss might say, "You have to take training on another topic." We often use the word need to identify the things that we're prescribing as solutions to problems that are yet to be identified. This is also the case in international development, where after natural disasters, many organizations might come in and identify what are the needs of the people that live there. What we don't know, however, is how are these needs defined? Are we talking about the same needs of the same population? And how can we make comparisons across the claims of needs from differing groups? We really have to have a needs assessment process in place to help us better understand and clarify what are the needs, how are we measuring them, and how can we make comparisons across the needs so that we can prioritize and make good, sound decisions. Outside of work, you also hear the word need used all the time. People will say in marketing and advertising, "You need to buy a new car." Or someone might say, "I need to go to the mall," or "You need to work harder," or "We need to fix these roads." Politicians especially like to use the word need in order to pin down key initiatives and to implement ideas that they think are solutions, though they probably haven't really studied the problem all that much. All of this can make you want to pull your hair out at times. But fortunately, we have needs assessment as a systematic process that can help us understand what needs are, separate them from wants, and set priorities in order to guide our decisions. So as my kids might ask, "So Dad, what are needs and what are needs assessments?" Let's start by looking at what are needs. So coming out of philosophy and ethics, there are common structures to statements about need. In this case, A, an individual or person, requires a result, which we'll label as B, in order to achieve another desired result that we can label as C. So we have an individual or group claiming a need for a result in order to achieve another result. This "in order to" is really essential because that's what makes it necessary for one result to be accomplished for another result. It's not that B has to be sufficient in order to accomplish C, but B must be satisfied to some degree in order to accomplish the second result of C. I'll give some examples that will help clarify. Rose might require lowering her cholesterol below 240 in order to maintain her overall heart health. In this case, Rose has a result to be achieved, lowering her cholesterol to below 240, in order to achieve a second result, in order to maintain her overall health. Similarly, Mimi could have a need if she requires improved team productivity in order to meet increasing client demand. So again, Mimi has to achieve a result, team productivity, in order to achieve a second result, which is increasing client demand. These are very different statements than if I was to say, Ari needs health insurance or my staff needs training, where I'm prescribing solutions. Rather, we're trying to focus on what results must be accomplished and why in order to accomplish that second result. We can thereby define needs as a gap in results, a gap between results that we're currently achieving and results that we should achieve in the future. And those results are where its satisfaction, or at least its partial satisfaction, is necessary for the achievement of another specific socially permissible result. So again, Rose's need could then be defined by lowering her cholesterol in order to maintain overall health, or Mimi's need could be defined by improving team productivity in order to meet increasing client demand. This is what we're trying to assess when we do a needs assessment. What are these gaps in results and what are their relation to each other? So again, by looking at the gaps in results, this allows us to start measuring needs, which is quite helpful as we try to guide our decisions going forward. Once we've defined those needs, then we can start to look at what are the solutions that may help close those gaps in results. It is these needs that we want to address either through learning or training programs or through a variety of other activities that may be appropriate in your field or profession. Let's take a look at another example. Let's talk about Juan. Juan is a training manager in a hospital, and he comes to you and he says that he needs an e-learning course on completing patient intake forms. As we start to think more about needs in the definition we just discussed, let's think about what are the different needs that may be packed into Juan's request. So his staff probably do have a need, and it could be something along the lines of reducing the number of incomplete or inaccurate intake forms in order to reduce the time that it takes for a patient to see a doctor for 4 minutes down to, let's say, 2 minutes. As the manager, Juan probably has a need as well. Maybe this is to increase the number of patients seen during a shift, and he would want to do that in order to increase revenue for the hospital and the organization. So the organization has a need that is likely embedded in his statement as well, related to increasing annual revenue in order to reach balanced budgets. And the hospital operates within a community and tries to serve needs at the community level. And in this case, it may be that the community is planning to grow and they have to be able to expand medical offerings to the new residents within the community. And this will thereby help it grow its tax base as well because they're bringing more people into the community. So within this simple statement, or at least what sounded simple, when Juan requested training, he was actually talking about several needs at several different levels, and they're all closely related. This is what we want to learn about when we do a needs assessment. And this is why it's important to think about what is the definition of need, because that is what we're trying to assess. Using this definition, we can see that needs are instrumental. That is to say, that they serve a function or purpose. The "in order to" part of the definition identifies what is the purpose of accomplishing the first result, and that purpose is defined by the second result that we're looking to accomplish. As we see in Juan's example, needs also come in series. So a person may require result B in order to get result C, but they require result C in order to get result D, and D in order to get E, and so forth. Also, needs have satisfiers. And this is really important because eventually in a needs assessment, we have to make recommendations or decisions about how to close the needs or how to close these gaps in results. So it may be that a diet is a solution or a partial solution for Rose in order to lower the cholesterol in order to maintain better heart health. And it may be that training is a partial solution for Mimi so that she can increase her team productivity and thereby meet increasing client demands. So needs have to have solutions that we can bring to bear to close those gaps in results that we've identified. So why do we care so much about the word need as we're conducting our needs assessments? Well, they of course define what we are assessing. They also clarify what are the goals of our assessment. Our goal is not necessarily just to make recommendations for our training programs, or to implement solutions that we already are experts at, but it's really to identify what are those results that must be achieved going forward, and then to look at what options are available. The definition will also impact on the design of your needs assessment. It will help determine what you measure and how you measure it. It will influence also what you report and who you report it to. And lastly, it will help you evaluate your own success. By having a clear definition of what you are assessing, at the end you can determine whether or not you adequately assessed it. In this case, we're assessing needs. So what are needs assessments then? We have a definition of need, and now we're looking at why are we assessing it. Needs assessments are essentially a process for guiding decisions. They're also a valuable input for strategic planning as you go forward and try to determine what needs will be satisfied in the future. They're also a very logical process for helping us separate what are our needs and what are our wants, so we can set priorities. As we mentioned earlier, needs are drivers of learning design often, along with supply and demand. So in essence, a needs assessment is a process for determining what results should be accomplished and what it is that might help us accomplish those going forward. Two definitions that have been offered are by Allison Rossett and Roger Kaufman. Allison Rossett submits that a needs assessment is a systematic study of a problem or innovation, incorporating data and opinions from varied sources in order to make recommendations about what should happen next. Which all seems very reasonable and logical, that you would want to do a needs assessment to guide your decisions going forward. Roger Kaufman complements this when he defines a needs assessment as a process for identifying and prioritizing gaps in results based on the cost to meet the need versus the cost to ignore the need. By adding cost to meet the need versus cost to ignore the need, Roger Kaufman's definition adds some complexity and depth and gives us really a structure for how are we going to prioritize. Because when we start to identify needs, we'll often end up with many more than we anticipated. And in order to make decisions, we have to be able to set priorities among our needs. So needs assessments provide a systematic process so that we can apply it again and again and improve our processes going forward. They also allow us to justify decisions before we make those decisions. Too often we make the decisions and then we have to scurry about trying to justify the decisions that we've already made. We want to reverse that process when we use a needs assessment. A good needs assessment is also scalable, so you can use the same approach for a small decision that you make on a daily basis, or for a large programmatic decision that you may take 3, 4, or 5 months to decide about. It's also useful if your needs assessment can be replicable. This will allow you to repeat it many times and continually improve your processes. So the needs assessment you do 2 years from now will be far better than the needs assessment you do 2 weeks from now. It also should be systemic and look at a variety of stakeholders and perspectives. We don't want to get fixated on a particular solution too early. We want to bring a lot of perspectives and views into our needs assessment so that we truly understand the need and can make objective decisions about what should happen next. And often those solutions will be interdisciplinary. So it may be things that we're really good at, or we may find that the solutions are things that are better left to others. And both of those are good results from our needs assessment. So a couple key questions that you'll ask in a needs assessment are, what are our needs? What are those gaps in results? And how do they relate to each other? How do we prioritize those? What are the causes of the needs? And then what are the possible alternative things we can do to close those gaps in results or improve our performance going forward? To end the lecture, let's do another self-reflection activity. So again, pause the video. And in this one, I want you to think about and write down a complex decision you're trying to make. It can be a decision within your organization, or it can be a personal decision. Once you've written down the decision you're trying to make, I would like you to write down 3 or 4 steps or processes that you're using in order to make that decision. To better understand how you're making the decision is always important as you try to improve your decision making. After you've written those down, I want you to ask yourself a few questions. Is the process that you're using systematic? Can it be replicated? Can it be scaled? Does the process provide you with the information to justify your decision before you make that decision? Or have you already made the decision and you're really just trying to put a process in place that will justify the decision you've already made? Lastly, is the process exploring new and different options that may lead to better results? Is it forcing you to think with a broader spectrum of ideas, bring ideas from other fields or other perspectives to bear to help close the gap in results that you're looking to close? With that, we'll finish Lecture 1 of Discovering Needs.